Paul Heyman is one of the people I choose never to be around.
You mentioned Paul Heyman a couple of minutes ago. We were talking about him before we started talking about CM Punk, and this show is going to be mostly dedicated to Paul Heyman stories. But the first thing we've got to mention about Paul Heyman is the video that you did last week. Now, you were talking about the need to apologize to Paul Heyman and the boys on the Rise and Fall of the ECW DVD. This was an extra on the DVD. It's a very memorable extra because I remembered it from 20 years prior. And it's one of those things you were talking about it, and once again, you've been maybe overly harsh on yourself, and I'm your Lance Russell in the, oh, come on, that kind of thing. Don't be too hard on yourself. And I agreed with you. And a lot of people in the comments agreed with you as well, as far as, and let's tee this up for people who haven't watched it yet, is you left ECW. In fact, no point me saying it, just very briefly why you felt the need to apologize, and then we'll get to the comments.
Well, it was more for the boys. And like I said, that's really what counts. Paul is a different element altogether as the boss and doing proper business. But the boys who made Stevie Richards what he was in ECW, Big Stevie Cole, the BWO, the whole act, you cannot get there on your own. It's like football, but times 100. You can't get there on your own. You can't throw a pass if someone's not there to catch it. You can't be a wide receiver if the quarterback doesn't throw you the ball. In wrestling, it's cooperative, even more cooperative, the most cooperative sports or entertainment entity that you could ever be involved with. I cannot be Big Stevie Cole fighting for the World Heavyweight title in the three-way dance, which, by the way, could have put Dreamer in there, could put anybody in there. Paul put me in there with Sandman and Terry Funk. Everybody had a part to play to get me to that level. The Little Guidos, the Axl Rottens, even the, Kid Cash I wrestled, Ricky Morton, Balls Mahoney, everybody. New Jack putting the shirt on, the Steve Williams thing with the tearing the shirt off, getting kicked. All this stuff led up to people's perception that I was a main event talent. So I leave ECW, not doing proper business on the way out, putting other people over, left suddenly for WCW. And then, like I said, a rash of bad decisions, which I think everybody can identify. When you try to over fix something, you make it worse, instead of kind of just trying to figure out where you're at. So I think what people criticized was, and might have been misconstrued, that I apologized for what it was, and I was still sorry for the way I did business with Paul. That does not, how should I say, that does not make him innocent of the charges that everybody knows that are attached to Paul Heyman that we're going to talk about in this episode. The lying, the bounced checks, saying I'm going out to film Rollerball, and he shows up on Raw, and the ECW talent sees it on Raw. We're going to talk in detail about that, how much it hurt Dreamer to a point of almost committing a heinous crime live at WrestleMania 17. So that's exclusive to that. But like I said, this business, these shows and podcasts on YouTube or whatever, wrestlers are always deferring blame to other people. Wrestlers are always saying, yeah, but this guy. Yeah, but that guy. Yeah, but the promoter. I should have been world champion. They kept me down. They buried me. I was the great. You got to have that level of confidence internally, though. You didn't think I got in the business to be world champion. I got in the business to be a multimillionaire and make multi-generational wealth for my family for generations to come. I had the same aspirations. Now I'm not in the business as a wrestler anymore. Now I need to run my own businesses in the real world, the fitness business, this brand with you, whatever other aspirations I have as Michael Manna, not Stevie Richards. Looking at it that way, I have to be hyper accountable in my own way. Like I said, I don't do anything halfway. I'm either going to make a ton of excuses 100% of the time, or I'm going to blame myself 100% of the time. The thing people misunderstood and misconstrued is I do not carry this around every day. When we finish this show, I go out there and play ESPN, actually EA and NCAA college football with my friends. I'm creating stuff here in the studio. I'm editing fitness videos. I'm having or living the best life that I can live. I'm enjoying being a married man, all these different things I enjoy. I do not sit there and wait for, oh my God, I hope Paul saw the clip and I hope Paul calls me and I hope maybe I'll get the fast ringtone like Roman Reigns did on SmackDown. I have no desire, honestly, to be around any of these people. We've talked about conventions and signings that I've turned down in other appearances. I have no desire. If I bump into them and have a conversation, much like JBL, totally fine. I don't seek them out anymore. There was a point where I was in the business, you're seeking out the approval of these people that are never going to approve of you. Now in my life, it's attract or reject. As easy as that. I choose to be around the people I want to be around, and I choose not to be around the people I do not want to be around. And by the way, Paul Heyman is one of the people I choose never to be around. And it's a longer list than the people I want to be around that are in the business, because those people I'm already around. I just talked to Big Sal from ECW for 40 minutes yesterday about everything but wrestling. And it was beautiful. Funko Pops, video games, what are you doing? Catching up like friends do. So with that being said, and I don't know how I can close the point, I'm not wallowing in the mud, as you would probably say over there. I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I'm so happier. I'm much happier now than I've ever been in wrestling. And it's amazing. A business that I obsessed with. If there could be more hours and days in the week, I would have obsessed more about wrestling at one point. Now, outside of this and researching and getting the facts straight and trying to put on the best show that we can put on, I do not think about it for 1 nanosecond. And that's not to denigrate people that do obsess over it, because if you're in the business, you should obsess over it. You should watch every bit of tape, study everything. If I say something negative, go out there and prove me wrong. Have a chip on your shoulder like I did. I'll show you, you'll see. MF me, go out there, have the best match, tell the best story, make the most amount of money, and say, Stevie Richards, you're a fool. I'm main eventing WrestleMania. I don't harbor any ill will for anybody, but I also don't seek anybody's approval of anything either. If I did, we would never talk about what we talked about for the past 21, 22 episodes. And even you see it, and let's be honest and peel back the curtain. There are times I say, I don't really feel comfortable talking about this. But I realized sometimes when it feels uncomfortable and it feels weird, much like in the wrestling business, you've got to lean into it. And it's good for business. And these are things people want to watch and listen to. And hopefully we put it out in a very nuanced and detailed fashion.
With that being said, just to explain once again, then I'm going to read the comments. Stevie received a broken neck from errant Terry Funk, dropping a guardrail on the back of his neck. And instead of sticking around with ECW, where they weren't paying him very much, but, they were using him very well, near the top of the card, he ended up signing with WCW instead for far more money. And then it would allow him to, one, probably wrestle less because he could almost be manager of Ravens, who'd also just jumped to WCW, and two, get paid more, and therefore he could afford the neck surgery. Now, that being said, that is sort of my way of looking at it. I know it's different to your way of looking at it last week, and a lot of people wrote in hundreds upon hundreds of comments. I read and copied some of the top ones that got the most likes, and I want to put a few of them to you, and then I'll let you react, and then I'll give a few more to you. Terry Eubanks says, if Paul Heyman still holds a grudge against an injured and scared 20-something-year-old Stevie Richards for finding better employment, he needs to grow the hell up. Station Al, if a promoter can't meet his bare minimum responsibility of paying his talent, then they deserve absolutely nothing in return for those talents. Rad Alexander, I get Stevie's commitment to the other wrestlers, but F. Heyman. The fact that people just forget how much he lied and scammed wrestlers out of paying them while having them do crazy, extreme stuff they did to their bodies is wild. Mike Awesome left because he wasn't getting paid and he was the champ. RVD stopped showing up for a while because he wasn't getting paid. Cornette has told stories of Paulie being a liar. Hell, Heyman himself was laughing about how much of a liar he was when he did Jericho's podcast a long time ago. Paul Heyman's one of the greatest wrestling minds and promos ever, but as a businessman, he's scum. And one more. Rare Wrestling Video said, after your neck injury, Steve, you obviously needed the money to pay for the surgery. WCW could help you with that, and ECW couldn't or wouldn't. I think a lot of people would have done the same thing if they were in your shoes. So basically, everyone isn't on Heyman's side. They're on your side and basically saying they would make the same decision you did.
Very true, but I was in the wrestling bubble. And ECW was kind of like a cult. So Paul never made anybody do anything, by the way. He had such a motivational type of thing. He was very charismatic. He was a cult leader, essentially. He could get you to volunteer to do it without him putting you in that position. No excuse. So when people are saying too that, certain things, and I've gotten messages and emails from people that both sides of it, hey, you shouldn't be so harsh on yourself. But at the same time, you're kind of simping for Paul. You're kind of, which I don't understand. That's the part of like, I'm waiting for the call as I'm telling the truth and putting it all on me, which is fine. I love the fact that people comment either way. I do. Everybody having an opinion about it or a perspective is great. Now I look back at 2020 hindsight, years and decades later, that's the businessman I am today. I told you before, I had a couple rough conversations with an fitness affiliate this week regarding money. And I used the lesson from ECW where I let people, or maybe even further in my career, talking about WWE, the contracts kept going back to 75 grand, TNA, the opportunity, which never came, or ROH, all these different things that I set myself up for with total enthusiasm to trust that they would do the right thing. And they didn't, as most wrestling promoters won't, by the way. But now, as a businessman outside of wrestling, I'm taking the lessons where I made that mistake, and in instances like that, where I held my ground, respectively held my ground, and presented it as I am a valuable asset and brand, and I'm a valuable partner in this. That was the lesson on that. So I carried that, not, oh God, I wish wrestling would call and this time they'll take care of me. Trust me, I have lots of friends that are still in the business once a week calling me for 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour with the same vicious cycle. TNA, WWE, they screw me over. They don't pay me enough this and that and that. I'm like, well, why don't you leave and go somewhere more valuable? Well, I'll just wait it out. Maybe stuff will change. You've been there 3 years. Nothing's changing. Do you see what I'm saying? My lessons learned from that, the penance that I said I paid in wrestling, that's done. It's fine. I'm completely happy right now. Of course, I'm a little insane because every day I wake up, it's up to me, just like you and any other independent contractor or businessman. But at the same time, I do not want to go back to that. I do not desire anything. I don't desire even a little Royal Rumble appearance for 6 to 10 seconds. I do not want to be around these people because I choose not to be around them. And it's the best feeling in the world. Any wrestlers that are listening to me or watching me right now, I'm telling you, there's hope and there's definitely happiness on the other side.
I'm going to give you one more comment that was sort of backs up exactly what you were just saying there. DW Tech Fan says, Stevie Ray from Harlem Heat once said the pro wrestling business warps the human mind like nothing else I've ever seen. Richards is sorry he left ECW the wrong way when Mike Awesome or Paul Heyman did, and Heyman is the one who's still mad at Richards. Your place on the card dictates whether you have value, and if you're a main event guy, you're just labelled as challenging, and you call your own shots and do whatever you want to do. If a lower card guy does the same thing, he's not doing business and he's hated. It's the same thing, but because of the perceived values, it's treated differently. Pro wrestling truly is a gigantic mind F.
I can't follow up with that. That is, you just encapsulated the entire business. Thank you very much. That was, all the comments were great. We love all the comments from anybody, whether it's positive or negative towards this. We take the feedback. You see each and every episode on a production level. We take the feedback to heart and try to improve it. But that comment, out of all those great comments, that is probably the comment of the year.
I want to ask this to you. So I know obviously you're looking at the reality of the situation and you decided to choose WCW over ECW, but think about this.
And over WWE, because I had spoken to Bruce Pritchard. And over WWE.
Say that again, sorry.
Yeah, they were talking about putting me in DX.
Well, that's further in 99, though.
No.
I'm talking about...
No. No, this is when I was leaving ECW. I met with Bruce. I met with Vince. Yeah. That was
future episode. I'm writing it down. I promise you.
No, I swear that happened. People say, "Oh, there's no way he'd be." Remember the interview, the WSI interview, where they say I was considered for DX? I
got the impression it was 99.
No,
when you went with, or when you started.
I signed with WWE in 99. This is 97. when I had the choice of that, I went to WCW. And Bruce was not happy about that because I had met with him, met with Vince. It just didn't feel right.
People hate when I say this, but I promise you, future episode. I promise you.
We're going to have an
be doing
episode named the future episode where we're going to cover the entire gambit of everything.
I've already written it down then. If you had gone back to ECW, let's say you say, okay, well, fine, I'll just continue making $200 per shot or whatever it was you were making at the time. And then you won't be able to afford your net getting fixed because I doubt that Paul Heyman would have paid for it. You never know, maybe, but probably not. And then what could have happened? He talks you into something that maybe you're not comfortable with, or you take a weird bump, or you take some sort of weapon shot to the head. It compresses your neck, it damages it further. If you hadn't have gone to WCW, where it wasn't at least as hardcore and crazy, that could have saved your career getting out of ECW that time. Do you ever think of it sort of the inverse way, like I've suggested there?
Well, everything happens for a reason. So there were positives attached to that. There was a path. I think the bigger benefit, like I said before, was all those bad decisions in the moment, the bad decisions that kept fostering a lot of resentment and mistakes and a lower return on each decision, built work ethic. It toughened me up. It toughened me up for life. It set me up for where I'm at now, to never give up, to not blame other people, to not make excuses. It took a while. It took a long time. And I didn't necessarily get it right away either, because once again, I went up to 262 pounds with the biggest opportunity that I've ever had or would have had afterwards in my career with the right to censor, and gained 60 to 70 pounds. And my work was the worst it's ever been. So you go through this roller coaster ride in your life. Now I'm trying to even it out and keep it a little more higher than lower. But like I said, off camera at Patreon, I go, there's instances I'm ready, fire, aim. I fly, you know what I mean? I don't think everything through. So there's times where my wife is like, hey, you're being a little too Philly. Stop it. That's what she calls me because I'm from Philadelphia. So I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But that's another way of looking at it. And that's a great way of looking at it, because maybe we wouldn't be sitting here, because I wouldn't have had the career. I never would have went to WWE. I would never had the physical, I would have never had the physical durability to survive WWE with those hard rings, or even WCW with the monsters they had there. So maybe it was just all lined up the way it was supposed to happen in the whole body of my career. So that's an excellent point. And he would not have paid for the surgery, because I remind everybody about the episode where I talked about where I had my face broken in Reading, Pennsylvania, my fault for not ducking off of Rob's kicks, and it broke my nose, orbital bone. And he told me to go to New York City to this doctor, and Dream was like, he's lying to you, wacko. He didn't call me wacko back then, but he's lying to you. So I went there, and it was a pizza place, and I had a slice of pizza. So he wouldn't have paid for it. There's no way.
Did you feel better after the pizza, at least?
Well, here's the thing. If you have a broken nose, even an orbital bone, but the broken nose, and you chew, you forget that you can't breathe through your nose. It's incredibly off-putting. But then as your orbital bone is as you're chewing, your orbital bone is shifting from north to south. Yeah. I mean, it's great pizza. Philly's still better than New York pizza.
Brother,
comment below.
Broken their nose.
That'll get comments.
I was going to say, if someone who's broken their nose more than once, I fully appreciate what you're saying.
Did you ever have the gauze? I had the gauze stuffed up my nose when I had it fixed the one time after Chris Masters, and I couldn't breathe at all for 4 days.
No, never had the gauze. I had the first surgery I had there was, I don't know if it was like calcified bone, or they called it bone or whatever it was. They had to actually, from my septum at the top, they had to actually extract like a piece of bone or whatever it was, or some calcified whatever from the middle, which is why I couldn't breathe.
Oh my God. So you had a deviated septum, but it was still in the center, just extended over.
Yeah, it's like at the top had swelled up and something had grown in between, which basically says I broke it as a kid, and then while I was still growing. Do you know what I mean?
It fused wider than it should have.
Yeah. So, in the septum at the top. So that was awful. Anyway, oh, for God's sake, I'm going to have to go for surgery again at some point, but who's got the time, Stevie? Who's got the time to have surgeries?
Oh,
apart
I
from the
don't know.
surgeries I've had.
I think I'll probably have one after this episode, just for all time, just for all time's sake.
One on the back, why not?
Hey, it'd be good for the fitness channel. I
Yeah.
did. I
Aha.
didn't survive this. I'll let James handle the thumbnail and the title.
Chalk outline.
Here, thumbnail.
Screen grab. Control screen grab. So, with Paul Heyman, this leads us to something that we were actually going to talk about today. We were going to be talking about the invasion. And then there was so much to talk about with Paul Heyman and the pre-invasion that this show ended up just being about Paul Heyman for the most part. And this leads us to Paul jumping to the WWF. Now, I believe the last show, ECW, was in early January. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he was telling people, oh, just hang on, ECW's on a bit of a hiatus, that kind of thing. And then one day he just all of a sudden, and this also ties up with a previous show that we've done, Jerry Lawler and the Cat disappear. Jerry Lawler is, of course, the lead announcer for Raw and SmackDown at the time. And then there's a slot to be filled. And then all of a sudden the next week, Paul Heyman's involved. Was that the first, as far as you're aware, of anybody with an ECW realizing that that's when ECW was done, that Paul Heyman was now with the WWF?
Yeah, when he showed up as the commentary partner for JR, I believe, that was the first indication to the talent, to the roster. And this comes from Dreamer, Big Sal, Guido, Danny Doring, a lot of people that I'm still friendly with now that had told me the story that he had said he was going out to California to film Rollerball, which he did. He was in Rollerball. If you haven't seen it, don't bother. But
It's a cinematic masterpiece.
yeah, it's a master. I mean, to close ECW down for Rollerball, that really wasn't a good enough reason. So, yeah, he was supposed to go out there, and he just showed up on Raw with JR, and that, according to the guys, that was it. That was exactly, their indication. I don't know if there was a phone call, group call, meeting. I don't know what it was, but it was very interesting because you had people coming into ECW after that, or WWE from ECW after that. And I wasn't privy to the encounters, the conversations. I'm assuming with them there and Paul there, they were going to be very political and not tell him or anybody else how they really felt about what he did. But guys weren't happy. And of course, Paul Heyman was famous, Big Sal. And, that's the other thing. I try to mention names and stuff of people that obviously say you can say it was me. There's a famous joke as early as yesterday, as we're recording this, that I always joke with Sal because he had told Big Sal, probably a lot of other people, he goes, if I have to drive a cab to pay you and keep ECW in business, I will, on my father's eyes. And that's anytime we say, when someone goes, come on, man, you're BSing me, I'll be like, on my father's eyes. Because he's a meme now, I guess, to most of these guys, just a catchphrase or whatever. But he was so doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, guaranteeing these guys, kind of like a promoter guarantees you a job for life. Never run away. Johnny A, you have a job for life, Stevie. Oh, God, I'm getting fired today. So you never could trust him with that, but he would always double and triple down on that stuff of guaranteeing you these things. And that was the one last thing. Now, I'm not aware of any of the financial aspects, how much trouble the company was in. I was already in WWE at this time. So I don't know if they were already on the course for bankruptcy court and all these other things, which eventually happened, and Paul just went there. I'm sure he masked it or presented it when he was, if he ever was confronted by anybody, and even in a friendly way, like, what happened? He was like, I came here to make sure all of you had a job in WWF, which he did get guys. I'm sure he politicked for some guys, but just as many guys probably that maybe spoke out or were more open about their disdain for what he was doing or not doing. Those guys probably never showed up or ended up getting buried when they came in.
Was there any indication when Paul Heyman came in advance that you knew he was going to be there, or did he just show up one day and surprise a lot of people?
If I can correctly recall, I know there wasn't any kind of meeting like, hey, Paul's coming in to replace Jerry Lawler and Jerry's gone. There's never been those kind of conversations. It's just like, here he is, and that's it. I think I just saw him walking down the hallway to the production meeting. I was like, oh, that's strange. But I kind of knew because they were on life support for a very long time. They were floated. I mean, Chris Candido, Shane Douglas, I'm sure Shane's talked about everybody running their credit cards up, paying for flights, paying for shows, back pay on the guys, bounce checks, all this stuff was going on. So the indication that this thing was not going to last. That's why everybody talks about TNA. TNA has been on life support for 20 years. They just seem to always stay alive with it, but they always seem to be one heartbeat away from going out of business. That's the way the guys felt in ECW towards the end.
We might as well stick with money then. How many people does Paul Heyman owe money to? Or maybe it might be easy to name the people he doesn't owe money to.
He doesn't owe money to me, because if he owed money at my salary, there was hours left in the company, not days, weeks, months, or years. I don't know. The people that have verbalized or vocalized the money owed to them, like Shane has, Dreamer has, I don't know about Taz, Bubba, or anybody else on the card. I know Rob had, like you said, gone away for a while because he wasn't getting paid, came back. That was going on. But Rob's a different animal, like that comment said, which was an awesome comment. He valued Rob way more than a lot of other talent. So obviously it was a pecking order of who was going to get paid. And even Rob was screwed out of money. So that's the whole thing too. I think in retrospect, guys kept their mouths shut. They kept their mouths shut a lot too with Paul, because I can make the money back if he gets me a deal in WWE. And that's kind of the way it resurfaced with a lot of guys coming there.
I've got some names that have verbalized that they owe him money. It's not comprehensive, but I think all these have said that. Shane Douglas, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, Rob Van Dam, Chris Candido, Tammy Sitch, Joey Styles, Rhino, New Jack, Francine, C.W. Anderson, Little Guido, a ton of the undercard guys, Mike Awesome. One thing about the undercard guys is that a lot of them would just, what was it, $75 if they got that, and then a lot of them would just work for free just because they wanted to be on the shows, they were young, wanted to get experience. Or, Paul Heyman had convinced them, you're young, you need to get experience, look at this as an audition for greater things, which happened for some of them. But there's
That's how I started. I just showed up with my bags and got chokeslammed from 911 for what felt like forever. That was the way it used to be back then, and the ECW is probably the last place that did that sort of thing of show up with your bags, drive. People were driving hundreds, if not thousands of miles to shows to do that. And then, 6 to 8 or 10 in a room trying to save money. So I really do, put over those guys and girls to do that, because you really do want it. But then it becomes just on an overarching theme. What you have to figure out the tightrope of when do I stop and treat it like it's a business? Because then if you're always going to work for free, nobody's ever going to pay you.
I'm going to harp on a couple of things about bankruptcy and payment, and then we're going to get to a contract story that I'm excited to hear about. I find it incredibly weird that ECW, when I say that they had almost no talent on the roster making six figures. Maybe there was Rob Van Dam, a couple of others. But for the most part, people were arguably underpaid or not paid at all. They were packing out buildings, mid-size, so, they were still selling out like, 4,000 seat buildings, even towards the end. They were selling pay-per-views. They had 2 games out. I'm not going to get into the whole Acclaim withholding money kind of thing, hoping they'd go into bankruptcy and then etc. And then there were figures that Paul Heyman was getting all the money for, because no one got any royalties because, of course, Heyman signed all the contracts. T-shirts, which I'm sure was the same thing as well. Basically, the company had such low overheads. How did ECW, in your opinion, get so many $1 million in debt? Because for all intents and purposes, to the naked eye, they were a successful mid-sized company.
I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I was around Paul when I was with the company, and ECW was doing great merch sales, great houses, maybe not to the point of some of the 3,000 to 5,000 seat ones. We would go to the Beaver Dome in Pittsburgh and other places that were much bigger, but not too often. We were still in the ECW arenas, the Greyhound track in Revere. That's a few hundred people, maybe 1,000 people in some, but the merch sales, the DVD sales, this was still a tape trader type of business, VHS tapes and stuff. it was a worldwide type of thing. And Dreamer was running the merch. I remember Lloyd Van Buren in the ticket office. We were working nonstop. There was tons of things going on that should have generated a lot of money. Not to mention, we did have sponsors from time to time and other things. I don't know about that. There's a missing element to this that I can't speak on. The money went somewhere and it didn't go to the boys, and it seemingly didn't really get totally reinvested back into the company because from what I saw, we still had the same production team of Ron and Charlie and doing the business out of their parents' basement and editing. And I couldn't tell you. That's something like I even wonder to this day, and people can speculate about did something personal happen to the money on Paul's part or what happened here, but I don't know. You look at it and like the money, the gate, the merch, the VHS sales, other things that the company was making money on, to not be able to grow, much less be on a path to bankruptcy and not paying the talent. And that's Ron and Charlie production. I think he was behind on paying them as well. I don't even think Paul was getting paid. It's weird. You never saw the money. Like it wasn't like he showed up in what was back then, like a Tesla Model X or something, $100,000 car. He wore the same stuff basically all the time. Unless that was a facade, he looked like he was struggling just as much, if not more, than the people in the company. And like I said, that could be like, hey, look at me, I'm living it too kind of thing. Or he really was as broke as everybody who worked there.
There was also the bit that you alluded to beforehand. At the end, he said he was going to Hollywood to try and secure an ECW TV rights deal, and all he does is end up in Rollerball.
Oh, I missed that part. That was the official, like, on the surface reason that he told the talent. I'm sorry. He said, I'm going out there for ECW, for the boys. I'm going to get a deal. And yeah, he was filming that movie, if that's what you can call it.
He was.
The movie, if that's what you can call it. I don't know.
Lord. Who was the guy? He was Ostriker. He was Oz in American Pie. And I think Rollerball killed his career.
Sean Astin? Sean Scott.
It's not Sean William Scott. It's the guy who was.
Sean Astin was for Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry.
I'm just looking it up because it's bugging me now.
Also, Sean Astin was in the movie The Shift with Neil McDonough, which was one of my favorite bad guys of all time. That was a great movie.
I think you may have been thinking of Sean William Scott, but it was Chris Klein. That was just bugging me. He went into Rollerball and think, here's the next Hollywood star, and then Rollerball happened and it killed him off.
Maybe can we blame Paul for that too? I mean, that's
possibly, yeah.